How we doing, folks? My guest today is going to be Steven Fearing. Steve is one of the greatest coaches of all time in freestyle mogul skiing. He spent several years in the sport and has coached for several different national teams. He's been a national team coach for Russia, also Canada, Japan. He's been a consultant for China. He spent several years in the sport, coached Olympic gold medalists, world champions, World Cup winners, and has really had an illustrious career in the sport of freestyle skiing. And also spent several years being influential in several different areas in the ski industry. He is one of the co-creators or inventors of the Salomon 1080, so kind of the twin tip freeride ski and part of that freeride revolution in the late 90s, early 2000s, and is one of the co-founders and creators of the ID1 mogul ski. And in this episode, we go through and talk about Steve's career. We touch on some of the highs and lows and a lot of the learning lessons. And this was really a great episode. It was super insightful and had a lot of fun being able to chat with Steve, somebody I've known for a long time. And I really had a great time and learned a lot of insightful and in-depth things that I think are great takeaways. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks. We're moving. There it is. Mr. Fearing, thank you so much for taking the time and being able to make this happen. I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to making this one happen for a while and getting to have you on, such an influential figure. And the crazy thing is how long we've actually known each other. I think the first time that I met you, you had just come off of coaching Olympic gold medal for Japan in 1998. I think it was, maybe it was 99 when we met. It was the last year Freestyle International did their camp, and they actually did it up in Blackcomb. And you were up there on some Salomon, some of those 1080s that had just come out, which you created or very influential in. And I was just a tiny little 9-year-old at the time, but.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm very happy to speak with you. Yeah, we've known each other for a long time, known your family, and yeah, it's been a long road of different things in skiing, as far as not just moguls, but kind of the free ride kick. And yeah, I remember meeting you guys up in Whistler. I remember actually going to Salt Lake Olympics, having dinner with your family. So yeah, it's been a close relationship for a long time.
That's been great. So one of the things how did you get your start into freestyle? How did you kind of get into it on that spectrum?
Well, actually, back in my high school, early years, junior high, the junior world champion, Eric Sampson, was a classmate of mine. So he was one of the first junior world champions. And I had always been into Nordic skiing growing up in Minnesota, Wisconsin. We had a lot of flatland, so I just always wanted to be into downhill skiing, and I just kind of followed that avenue. But I've pretty much stuck to all ski sports. I haven't really been just into mogul skiing or freestyle. Had some experience with alpine skiing, and it's I think all aspects of skiing is really important, from Nordic to racing. Even did ballet for about 2 weeks. So yeah, so that was it was a mix. I kind of went in and out of every sport through my early years, and I just ended up really enjoying the mogul aspect of skiing. It just was kind of the thing that made me feel the most passionate about skiing. So that's where I ended up going.
Now, what was it growing up in Minnesota, what was it about that kind of drew you into, was that the downhill and everything else, just being outside? And cold air and wanting to go fast? I mean, I know you said the Nordic there, but what kind of drew you into the world?
Well, yeah, we kind of lived near a ski area. I
Oh,
used
okay.
to, uh, you know, I didn't really start alpine skiing or mogul skiing until quite late. I was 14.
Okay.
So I, up until that time, was just kind of going Nordic skiing around the the area. We had a farm. We just, had a lot of brothers and sisters, so we spent our time doing that. But finally, I one summer I decided to work and get my money together, and I bought my own ski stuff, and I started going skiing after school every day. So it was 6-7 days a week.
There you go. Very cool. Get bitten by the bug and then hook, line, and sinker ever since, huh?
Yeah, yeah. It's been freestyles. It's been really good, and it's something that makes me feel, when I'm in the mountains, like I can ski anything, and that's why I've always had that mogul skiing passion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's interesting how the world of skiing, it's such a small world, but then it can also be so big on so many different levels. One of the books I'm reading right now is about Jan Wenner, who's the founder of Rolling Stone, and he talks about just he grew up like skiing, and he's got a place in Sun Valley, and just the thrill of going fast, the mountain air, the exercise, the camaraderie of going and skiing with friends. I mean, there's so many different things about it to love, and it's one of those things, just getting to travel the world now, and just all the different relationships, and how they're, at least in our world and in the competitive world, they're your friends, but at the same time you're trying to beat them, or you're trying to get those medals and achieve all those things for whoever you're working for, whatever nation it might be. And it's tight knit and competitive, and at the same time it's just it's such a cool thing that really love. And it's crazy to see the paths that you go down, and where it leads. I mean, looking at your resume and all the different countries and nations that you've coached for and had influence on, I mean, it's just so impressive and inspiring to me, about what the possibilities are. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's and not just in the mogul skiing aspect, I mean, just with I remember I think it was probably like 9, I think, when 13 came out. Four Boys Productions came out with 13. I think my parents bought it for me for Christmas, and it was those Salomon 1080 skis that came out. I was like, what are these things? People are skiing backwards. I mean, the whole thing, you had the punk rock going with it. It was this whole just vibe that was like, man, I really want to be a part of this. Like, this is super, super cool. So how did that kind of come about? I mean, I guess moving forward just a little bit and into the coaching realm, and then Freeride kind of started, and you were at the forefront there working for Salomon kind of after you finished with Japan, or was it at the same time you were in development, like coaching Japan?
Yeah, I actually got, I would say, put on notice because I had been kind of under contract with Salomon Japan for the years up until Nagano Olympics, and they wanted to kind of make a full-time program. And that's one thing that, compared to, let's say, current days, back then, national teams didn't have as many training camps. So I was a Salomon coach privately for the Salomon skiers in Japan, and we just came off a gold medal in Nagano, Salomon skier, and they just said, "Hey, we're not sure if we're going to really continue with moguls. We want to continue your contract." It was just an annual contract. It was a good supplement because it was something that made the job full time, I would say. And so I left Japan, and I got back to Whistler, and I was sitting in my condo with Mike Douglas, and we we had been talking about, how the mogul skiers, the Coussins, JP Auclairs, they were just spending a lot of time in the half pipe, and in the slope, or just in the park. So we just spent 2 weeks like hashing it out, kind of sitting in my place, and I said, I got to come up with a proposal, and we did a complete package of making a team and making the ski. I went back to Japan and I met with like 6-7 different ski companies. Obviously, they thought they didn't really know the reason, but I was connected enough from the ski association and our success that I just went in, and I was able to talk to directors of marketing and presidents, and went to 7 companies. And in the beginning, everyone said no. Mike Douglas went to the U.S. Kind of subsidiaries, or also the French, and everyone said no. So it was basically 6 weeks after we had put the project together, and everyone had said no. So we were just like, oh, what are we gonna do? And it doesn't look good. And then all of a sudden, Salomon Japan called me back, and they just because the marketing director had been out at that time, and I showed it to the president sales guy, and he said, this is the coolest thing. You guys gotta, you gotta come back. We love the videotape. We want to do something. So they called Salomon France and said, we'll fund it. We'll pick up the tab. So it was Salomon Japan that actually kind of really pushed kind of the project through, because everyone else, when we directly talked to them, they didn't want to do it, which was crazy.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So how long did it take once kind of the wheels got turning and they kind of said, hey, we'll fund it, because the response was obviously pretty awesome and influential for years to come. Twin tips.
Well, yeah, and it's no secret. A lot of Peter Judge from Canada, we always joke about it. It's just, the Olamark skis reinvented. So, my grandparents had those in the garage. So, no, it's just, it was actually the fastest ski concept to market that Salomon's ever done. So basically, it was, I think, 7 or 7.5 months. So yeah, so that was early summer when they finally said, we'll fund it in June. We were in Team France in October, and Salomon Japan. We were doing a Japan camp with Salomon. And they just drove me to Annecy, and we were at a sushi place, and a white van pulled up at the end of dinner, and there was like 50 skis in there. And they said, choose 3 or 4 shapes. And we just took 3 or 4 shapes, and I just explained about the twin tip and how much we wanted. And in December in Le Plan, France, we did our first test. I did it with the mogul skiers after the competition, actually after the trainings and the competition.
Okay. Right
there in Le Plan. So, and then it was, hitting the market that spring.
Wow.
Pretty full on.
Wow. And what was the response by the testers and everything? What did they think of it?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was a mix of every country, and I think that really kind of made the kind of the spirit and part of the growth. Like I remember some of the young French kids from the mogul team were just, they were going off, right away, like landing switch, everything. We were, small kickers, but, uh, Yanni Latala was one of them. He was probably one of the big influencers in kind of making that ski doing unique things, because when we did a competition that next year in Japan, he did some crazy tricks. So yeah, it was mostly mogul guys in the beginning, or guys that transferred over from mogul.
Sure.
And yeah, it was just kind of created by that ultimatum of, we got to find something new, otherwise we probably won't keep moving in freestyle. So
Yeah,
it was a big thing for them.
no, I mean, super influential. I mean, you look at a lot of those people that were on that ski, I mean, really were mogul ski. I mean, started in that freestyle world that decided to branch off. I mean, Mike Douglas, as you mentioned, JF Cousin, JP Auclair, a lot of the Canadian, I mean, Vinny Dorian, with who else was in there that was going through?
A lot of French from when came off of moguls and
right, Candide Thovax, right? Yeah, I mean, he's still in it. I mean, Tanner Hall, he was probably like 15 or 14 at the time, and he was young, but I mean, he was a former bump skier in there as well. So yeah, it's pretty interesting and wild to see the growth. Now every single ski, at least that you see in the US, it seems, are pretty much twin tips or that variety or Salomon or something. I mean, it's all interesting to see. That's got to be pretty cool to see the evolution. And I mean, that ski was so popular, and that color, and then they had the more thin, the white with the S in there, and kind of more that mogul ski, which came out, which I remember I wanted, but they didn't make Grom size at the time. At least in the bump ski.
Yeah, it was the 1080 mogul. I remember. Yeah, I think that's what Yanni skied on in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, no, super. Yeah, that was really, really different. Really cool ski. So after that, I mean, you have the success. I guess we'll backtrack a little bit into more of kind of getting the start into coaching, because I know you were with the Canadian team from 92 to 95, right? As kind of the technical coach and development coach there, and right. So kind of got the start in there. Now, were you coaching on like more the provincial or club level before you kind of got in there? How did the coaching start kind of begin for you?
Well, actually, coaching really started when at Whistler, doing summer camps with Cooper Shell and Steve Desovich at the World Mogul. So that kind of created my some aspiration to be more involved in the coaching aspects. And I just started actually doing some junior programs in Japan at that time. And after some camps that, I was training at the same time and trying to make some money. So used coaching as kind of that, way to be on snow and create some income at the same time. Then Liz McIntyre, one of the great technical skiers, silver medalist in Lillehammer. I started working with her in 92, private coaching. And at the same time, started working with the Canadian development team. So, I was just, I guess everything just wasn't planned. It just kind of, it came together, it's just trying to make ends meet and still trying to compete and be on snow as much as I could. So I had kind of a few different camps, and when the Canadian development team job came up, I just applied and worked with the a lot of, Mike Douglas was one of my athletes actually. So, there was just, it was
full circle,
like 35 athletes, I think. And, it was the one time I learned how to coach where I'd be talking to someone, watching the next person at the bottom of the course, and then glancing up at the top person and never really looking at the person, because I was watching, two people at a time and talking to a third. So, yeah.
Wow,
I
35
guess,
people. That's insane. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was it was this constant, we, obviously worked into a slimmer team later on, but yeah, it was something I think that in the beginning that Canada really, Peter Judge actually, people don't know Peter Judge is the current CEO of Canada, who's one of the big influences in my life. He actually changed what coaching is in freestyle skiing. He's the one that actually made it a profession, and I think that's what kind of drew me. Even though I grew up in the U.S., my mom's Canadian, but by all means, American, grew up in the U.S. But I never worked for the U.S. I just ended up in the Canadian system, and it was the levels and the training that they provide coaches, and I just really, feel that, Peter hiring Steve Desovich in the beginning just really changed how freestyle works. Because in the beginning, mogul skiing, it was this kind of more volunteer coaches, like Park Smalley back at the time in the US. He, maybe do 2 camps a year. You have a lot of the old school, Peter Young, Joe Ward, but it wasn't like a real profession. So Canada really changed that and influenced the world, because right now, you have specialty coaches, you have, team managers, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah.
And when did you first meet Peter?
83 at Freestyle International.
Freestyle, there you go. He had no idea how influential that camp really was, right?
The world of skiing freestyle.
To the world of skiing freestyle. That's for sure. Definitely. That's funny. So you're working under Peter, or you're helping with the development team there, and then so after 95, when do you kind of make that transition to Japan?
Well, yeah, I was. There's a group in Colorado.
Okay.
And that's where I was training at the time, a Japanese group, and they were connected into not national team members, but they were quite involved in mogul skiing. And I'd been doing camps with them, and they just, when Nagano was decided, because at the time they were more into aerials and ballet. And they didn't really have a strong mogul program. So I was one of the first foreign coaches, or was the first foreign coach that they had worked with. But again, their coaching system, it was more of a volunteer coaching system. So I just, when they decided to hire someone, I think it was like a 4-month or 6-month contract, and it just started that way. And then every year it just got a little bit better. And I just spent a lot more time trying to make it a full-time program, kind of more what Peter's envisioned. So kind of bringing that Canadian, full structure, full year training into Japan, and getting that professional side of it, because they had some good skiers for sure at the time when I got there, but not the structure.
And how hard, I mean, now you've done it so many, so many times, but how hard is it to come in and create that structure? And how much would you say it's changed for you over the years from when like you're just kind of in Japan there to as you go on and Russia and consulting in China and all those different like
Mm.
what are those I guess learning lessons or experiences and takeaways where you've kind of tinkered with okay maybe we don't really need like what are the needs versus what are like the have to haves and kind of some of those things in creating those structures because that has to be super difficult on so many different levels of having to create the proper system, and I feel like it's kind of ever changing as well.
Right. Exactly. You just said it perfect at the end, Bobby. It's constantly evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't really, you know, pick out one thing from last year that maybe 2 years, maybe I didn't agree with, and definitely 10 years ago, I thought it was the most important. So it's just, yeah, it's changing all the time.
Sure.
My experience with the teams that I've started with in trying to make a full-time program, it's just hard work. I mean, you have to get your hands dirty. You have to do every job. You have to be working, you know, just crazy hours because when you go to these teams, they don't have the resources in the beginning, but what kind of training and time and you know amount of work the athletes need to put in, and so you spend a lot of your personal time and energy just to get those things running. But by the time I started working with after Japan, after Salt Lake, um, it's kind of the the reverse where you get results and then you start getting funding. But we all know we need funding to get results a lot of the time. So Japan started getting the funding, so we started being able to hire more specialty staff, things to keep the athletes healthy, physios, trainers. But by the time I started working with Russia, for me, it was, I had a good idea of every position I wanted to fill. And I started out with a physical trainer, and then I hired an assistant technical coach, Jim Sheeman, who's now working in Canada. And then we hired an air specialist coach, Darcy Downs, who it's from your your old country of Ireland now. But I have I would say a Rolodex of a lot of people that I've worked with over the years, and I just was able to kind of pull the best from each person in different areas. Just really, making sure that we had kind of the most technical or the strongest technical base people in each area. So I think that's something that I've been able to learn. I think you probably hear a lot of times these companies, they learn so much because they're sitting around a large table of experts in every aspect of work, and so they learn so much. And after 2-3 years, they probably know more than when they came into the business. And that's what I feel. I've just been fortunate to work with so many amazing coaches and great people that I just try to absorb as much as I can. It's something that I feel lucky, and I've also have a lot of international workings with different countries of coaches. So I think freestyle we have kind of that outside of Central Europe connection. So I've used a lot of Asian countries and Russia's been one of my many. I have still a lot of friends there, and I have a lot of friends in Belarus and Ukraine. So it's something that I think freestyle. It's really been an effect this last year with us. Not to bring in politics, but
Sure.
I think that's a strong part of the freestyle family, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I learned so much from every country, and I don't think I necessarily you know just show up at the table and give them everything.
Sure.
I've come away full myself, so it's been
Mm-hmm.
good.
So, making sure you absorb like as much as you can and being very observant. Would you say, I mean, just kind of going into for you personally, like what are some of those unique qualities that you kind of think that you have to be able to help and provide just throughout your career and the success that you've had? Because one thing, I mean, I definitely just listen to you there. I mean, definitely talk like you don't it seems like you don't think that you're the smartest person in the room, and you listen and absorb that information and then kind of able to delegate and let people kind of make decisions and make mistakes and things of that nature. But what would you say just some of those unique qualities?
Yeah. Um, well, it's kind of hindsight. I really never knew when I started coaching what kind of coach I'd be. But I'm someone who empowers um, the people I work with, athletes, coaches. But I make decisions when people don't like to make decisions, and if I can explain that further, it's just
Mm-hmm.
like if an athlete comes to you, and maybe it could be as simple as like what trick should I do, which line should I ski.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the question is you have to look deep into why they're asking the question, is because you could say an answer like, oh, you look good in both lines, and these four tricks are looking good. But when someone comes to you, it's really, you just have to take kind of the responsibility off their shoulders so that they can free themselves up to focus on the task.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I remember many times as a coach, um, there's a risk in that, because die by the sword.
Yeah.
Things can go great, but it's never 100%. But I just learned that being precise and exact on decisions when the athlete asks and how they ask it's really important, because they're basically you know coming to you for help to relieve themselves of kind of that external pressure, and I think that's important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's super insight. I mean, I've definitely remember times earlier on and like, trying to come up with those decisions, and that can be a hard thing when you want the athlete to make the decision, or and I guess probably being younger, like I guess I was naive enough to not understand that side of like them wanting some of that real guidance, and as you say, like you helping them like making the decision. Sometimes it's been wrong, sometimes it's right, but whatever else, at least there's a clear cut. This is the move. This is what
Mm,
we're doing. Stick to kind of the plan from there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's something that uh, you over the years, the generations have changed too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the message is kind of similar throughout every person, and when you can help a person relieve some pressure and be able to focus more on their competition preparations and kind of their whatever their mental state, because every athlete has a different mental preparation, or kind of competition, let's say, a knack for it. And if you as a coach can kind of take some of those pressures away, it just it it makes them more confident without kind of giving them the, you can do everything, or, it gives them the, my coach is, someone that, kind of can make those decisions. And so I can relax a bit.
Mhm. No, it's definitely, it makes a ton of sense for sure. So kind of off of that, like what are some of those things, I guess, on the day to day, or maybe it's comp day, or organizationally, what do you kind of decide that helps you stay focused on what you need to achieve, or the team, or a certain particular athlete? Like, what are those things that kind of helps you stick to the bullet points, or stay focused on certain items?
Well, I would say the most influential, or the biggest point in my career was '97. It was before Nagano Olympics, and it was the World Championships on the same course.
Okay.
And we blew it. We blew it bad. So,
Oh boy.
So, I just kind of going back and kind of looking at, how things are going, the training. And I just remember the leader of the freestyle in Japan. He was he's kind of this old sensei type guy. And I had to go meet with him, and I was so nervous. And he basically said, he just looked at me with a soft smile. And when I walked in, he says, "I know you'll learn from this, and you will come back stronger next year." And the words, I know it's as simple as they can be, but I just went away, and things that I noticed is just how in competition, and then every competition has different levels of kind of that excitement. So every athlete, they get experience. Like a Michael Kingsbury probably enters the World Cup gate and probably has zero nerves, but you go to World Championships and Olympic Games, it's kind of that wave. You have to understand where to catch your moment. Mm-hmm. So I just realized at the World Championships, it was just like people were moving quick, eating quick, talking quick. So everything, if you just kind of, it was like watching everything in like, ×3, ×4 mode. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought, one thing that I have to do, and it was through some readings I had done, and I think it was part of living in Japan at the time, I was just trying to, in stressful moments, slow everything down. So if you go into a stressful situation and you do kind of deliberate things to breathe slowly, take your time, eat slowly. And so when we got to Nagano, I just at the Olympics, I was basically like holding athletes at the finish for like 90 seconds, because I could just remember from the year before, they come to the finish and then like within 5 seconds, they wanted to go up to the course. Or, I just really slowed everything down for the preparation for the 2 weeks before. Like and slowing it down, I mean, it's kind of that outside influential things. Mm-hmm. Like don't put anything in a rush and speak kind of in an elevated, stressful situation. So, I think that what I've still tried to do competition to competition, sure, is read each person and understand, like, are they doing those quick movements and not really in the moment? Are they already at the finish line, or are they, in the last training, or they're already at the competition? So you just have to keep in the moment. And sometimes it's just by slowing yourself down.
Now, from training, did you think that Thais Toya was going to go out? I mean, did she train super well and everything else? I mean, were you like, if she goes out and skis to her capabilities, she can walk away with a gold here?
Well, Steve Deswich said it one time. It's like I have a knack of elevating people to a level that he never thought they could get to. So I guess I disbelieve in.
That's a good compliment.
So I had faith in all my athletes and in the past, and it doesn't matter if they're number one or 10th on the team. I put the same amount of work and faith into each person. So looking back onto Ty, I would say, in the beginning, no, I really didn't think we were in a good situation, because a lot of personal things happened in her life. Her father passed away right after the World Championship, so it was not even a year later.
Wow.
She was really stressed. It was just like an emotional roller coaster. So I spent a lot of time and effort just, teaching her about how to plan, just simple things. So like I remember a 20-minute plan, because I thought a 20-minute plan, she was someone that you couldn't keep focused for more than an hour a day, maybe 40 minutes a day, an hour. So, I came up with a 20-minute plan, but I just gave her a way of, being able to deal with everything that she was stressed about, whether it was, what had happened to her family, if it was about, the stress of the competition. And so we used that 20-minute plan, and at different points, I would specifically say, okay, now it's time we have to think about your father, and let's think about kind of what he's meant to your life. And then, and then we go through a warm up and do something. And it's like, okay, now we have to go through, what the competition plan is. So through that 20-minute plan, and practicing it, it's not just competition day. You have to practice it. And
sure.
So by getting ready for that, when it came to Olympics, it again took a lot of stress off her shoulders.
Yeah, she skied great there, and that's it's one of those things you always see, and I think it's one of the joys, or one of the things that I really enjoy about coaching, is just how every athlete is so different and so unique. And especially in this,
Right.
it is an individual sport, but being able to find the right buttons or the right things to make that light bulb moment, or, to have things kind of click and work. And, some people you can be hard on, some people you can't. Like, there's just so many different variabilities. And my dad always said, you got to have more than one arrow in your quiver. You can't just use that same arrow over and over again. You got to kind of, okay, got to try this, maybe that'll work. And you never know what phrasing or what, there's so many ways to say the exact same thing. So it's always interesting about which one is going to work in the right way to get them to make that change or make that big leap. And whether it's slowing things down, coming up with that 20-minute plan, or it's super, at least I find it super interesting, and it's super cool and unique to get those insights and just the relationship building that you have with those athletes. You have like so many little like family members, I feel like, especially over the years, you invest, as you talk about, all the hard work and all the time into those athletes, all for an unknown. You never know what's going to happen at the end. Obviously you have what you're hoping for, but life seems to go in wild ways.
Yeah. You summed it up really well. And yeah, it's something that next year you know, there's things I'll definitely change, and yeah, I, I really feel that when I spend more time with people who kind of have new experiences, a variety of experiences, and I think now, as you're working with different teams, you're going to start feeling like how different cultures and countries influence a lot, you know. And I've
Hmm.
always taken my jobs. I love coaching, but I've always loved more the cultures or the different languages. And so that's been part of how I've been led on this international path, because it makes the job more interesting for me.
Hmm. Interesting. Hmm. Now, what like speaking to that, what are some of those things that kind of help you stay focused on whether the daily or monthly kind of plans and things like that? You know, to the different cultures and languages kind of keeps you engaged, and I mean it's a whole new world of learning. I feel like, you know, when you go from Japan to Russia, that's a pretty big jump in culture and language and everything else. So what are some of those things that kind of are is able to help you stay focused?
um, well, you know, I would say that it's having a good yearly training plan, and then from there it's quite easy to just kind of break it down into monthly and day by day
Hmm.
situations. So you know, it's again something that back in the beginning, working in Canada, you know, the 4-year, 2-year, 1-year plan was taught to us very early on, and they were one of the, you know, leaders in freestyle, I would say, of really focusing on how to make bike TPs, etc. And
Hmm.
cycling, we, you know, worked with some really interesting people at the time. So once you have those kind of plans set out in front of you, they're, you know, like your dad said, you have a good map, but maybe you have to go a different road. You know, you never have the exact path, and you find things changing. But just having that general plan, um, and trying to just understand it, then it's easier to make those path changes when you're in the moment.
Yeah. No, it's definitely having that plan set forth and kind of understanding when those challenges or whatever things may arise. Like you may lose some luggage, like or something like that on a simple stop. I luckily it was only me that lost bag, but everybody else got theirs. It's more important that the athletes have their bags anyway. I'm not competing. I'm just standing at the bottom. And I feel like I can fit into Avital, some of her clothes, my wife's clothes. I can just wear some of those, or, you know, it's the same size. Be a little tight. It's gonna
and
be a little tight, but we can make it work.
and EJ, it's not that far to walk actually
Right. Yeah. It's
to
not
get to the other side.
not too bad of a walk at all. So one thing you had kind of touched on that I just wanted to ask a little bit more on is just some of those failures or perseverance that kind of help that future success. And you kind of touched on it with 1997 and kind of, you know, not having the best results that you guys wanted, and then kind of turning that around the next year. What are some of those other examples for you just in perseverance, you know, or challenging times that you've had that have kind of propelled that future success, and kind of some of those learning lessons that you've taken?
Um, well, it's observation. I would say reading, just reading
Reading. Okay.
the people, reading the people around you, understanding kind of, I, you know, I've had people say, you know, I have a sense that, you know, I can gather what people are feeling, before they. I'm very sensitive in that realm of things. So, you know, I find those points important where, you know, maybe before the athlete knows that, you know, maybe they're stressed about, uh, you know, something preparing for the competition. I kind of feel it, and I head it off without trying to get them, kind of engaged in their stress, but trying to bring them into a place where they can find confidence in that. And it's one thing going back in the beginning when I worked with the Canadian development team, and it was a lot of athletes that moved on to be coaches in freeride and in mogul aerials. It's just when you get into that gate, there has to be a real sense of the confidence that you say. You can't just be, that cheerleader coach. You have to say positive things, but when you say them, they really have to be in a foundation of something true. Because if you don't have that foundation of truth, when you're trying to give that positive kind of lift to the athlete, they're gonna feel it when they're under the gun, or they're jumping from the frying pan to the fire. They're gonna not trust those things. So it's just important to always honesty, truth, foundation of what you communicate to them has to be there.
Absolutely. That definitely getting my notes in over here, just making sure. So you're talking about doing not only like of reading people and kind of getting a sense there. Do you have a lot of books or literature that you've kind of read to help in kind of just setting some of those philosophies or foundations that you've come up with over the years?
Yeah, actually, there was some Soviet. When I was an athlete, there was a cassette tapes. We used to have cassette tapes.
Oh yeah,
I brought this program with some workbooks. But he was from track and field.
Okay.
It wasn't a book, but he was teaching about targeting and compression, workload and unload. So to 18, I did it was Soviet times.
Okay.
So it was a Soviet, and I can't remember his name at the moment, but I'll put him I'll look it up and send it to you later. And then when I was in Asia, it was actually a lot of influence from just Asian philosophy, especially let's say in the Chinese philosophies, just how you can kind of control your thought emotions. So I used to walk around with cue cards from, different quotes from Chinese philosophers. So I guess it's not just specific books, but
sure,
just trying to gather information from different cultures at different times.
And I mean, do you feel that's made you, just much more rounded, being able to know those kind of different, because it's got to be difficult to, I guess, get that message across. Does it make it easier when you have a better understanding of the culture to be able to get through to some of those athletes or different people in the organization that you're working with?
Yeah, well, real life experience and living. So
sure.
I lived in Japan for on and off for 20 years, and even though the Asian cultures are very different, there's a basis of similarity. China, Korea to Japan, and I just I think being kind of really in the situation, in the day-to-day life, you start to learn how those things really can mean something. And back to when I grew up in the US and spent time in Canada, it's kind of like you can take those past experiences and bring them into the most current situation. So yeah, it's been important for me to always have you know a time where I'm just 100% into the culture that I'm working with, and that way I can just better feel and better understand what's going on. It doesn't seem like it, but Asia and Russia, of course, are extremes. But I spent a lot of time in Austria, and then Austrian and the Swiss are so different, and you start to find just little things when you start really getting into the situation of day-to-day life and spending a lot of time there. So I think it's important to immerse yourself in many different aspects of life.
Do you find that difficult? I mean, going around, I mean, it seems like it would be, but that seems like that's one of the unique things to you, is that you kind of enjoy that, being able to get into the culture and things like that. For me, that seems like it's a hard thing to be able to immerse yourself, but maybe I just need to be more open-minded.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just something. It's been something I've always aspired. I just love, it's really rare that I'll find something that I dislike in a culture. There's things that I would not bring back to my life from day to day, but it's when I'm in someone's country or I look at it like in someone's home, I can really embrace everything in their surroundings and understand it. Yeah, you feel relief sometimes when you're in let's say a situation where you kind of want to take a break, from that. But I think it's part of growing. There's things that in every country I've been that I still carry with me, and it's something that if I'd never lived in those countries or worked in those countries and did all aspects of life, it would not have influenced me the same way. So I have every country that I've worked with inside of me, and I think it's developed me as a person and a coach.
No, absolutely. That's super, super cool. So for those out there, just kind of maybe they're starting to work their way into coaching, or just maybe they're athletes, or just in general, what would you be some words of wisdom that we kind of haven't touched on so far to maybe help them with either they're struggling or things are going really well? What kind of words of wisdom would you have?
Wisdom. I would just say enjoy the process, and I know that's cliche in a lot of ways, but I think no matter what level athlete you're working with, the development, you can be working in a region, you can be working in a club, you can be doing a fun camp, you could be with your best skiers on the national team. But every development is just something that you have to just ingrain into kind of, how you're doing your coaching is everyone has a different coaching style, but just the process of really teaching and breaking it down. I think, coaching is, I just like teaching, and teaching doesn't mean necessarily demanding and this is the way it is. It's like trying to get all experiences and different experiences to the athlete to make that growth and enjoy the process, because what the finish line is, we never know. Every
Sure.
athlete
Yeah.
is um, different, but if you can let them enjoy the process, it's good for you as a person, as a coach. You feel much more satisfaction than a result.
Mm-hmm.
Just seeing those small breakthroughs and steps, I think is so important. Process.
All about the process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always the thing too, right? It really is the process and that part of the journey getting to go through, because I mean, at the end of the day, you get that result and you get to, or you don't get the result and you either enjoy it or you don't. And then it's just right back to training again anyway. You might take a slight break, but then you're just climbing up the water ramp, or you're at the top of another mogul course somewhere just trying to get better, or whatever else may happen, right? So you better be enjoying the ride, because otherwise, why are you doing it?
Yeah, no, and same in coaching. I mean, I've spent a year back in Alberta, but I enjoyed it. It was
Mm-hmm.
really kind of it's the path of just always going up is not. First of all, it's not going to happen, and just if you enjoy your work and your coaching, you're going to enjoy it at any level,
Mm-hmm.
no matter where you're at. And same as building courses. I think I've shoveled this more this October than I have in the last 5 years. So.
It's building season, working those shoulders and everything. Now I got a question. Some people might be upset with this, and you don't have to, but I'm just curious. 6-time Olympic coach, like been a part of 6 different Olympics. What's the favorite and what's the least favorite? I mean, or they all have their own that you enjoyed and that you loved? And I'm just curious. There's so many different ones to kind of go into. Do you have a particular one that is a favorite and one you really hated, or no?
No, I think I need to be politically correct. I don't know who's going to be watching this. But I'm nostalgic. I just think the earliest Olympics, it just felt different. Now it just feels more commercial. And I'm not saying it's whether it's nothing to do with country. It's nothing to do with location. It's just, maybe I'm just getting kind of numb to it. But it seemed like in the beginning it was just like training on NBC Sports back when you had 4 channels on the TV and you're just watching the Olympics. It just felt more nostalgic. So the earlier the better for me.
I got you. Now another thing I wanted to touch on, which especially we can't forget. I mean, ID1. Pretty sure it's got the monopoly on mogul skiing right now. I don't know. There's not too many other of those skis kind of out there.
Mm.
How did that? Because that kind of came a little bit after your time with Salomon and everything else. How just kind of talk me through that kind of brainchild and the birth of the now dominant. I think they have the last 3 or 4 Olympic gold medals on the men's side, and probably on the women's side as well. I mean, it's been a run of ID1 that doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon.
Well, the meat of the story was actually Aiko Omura was skiing with Hart, and it was something to do with it was very difficult to get Japanese to change to companies, so she wasn't coming to Salomon, and her sponsor was Bolei, Japan, and which is Fujimoto, and he just said to me one day, I want to make a ski. And so we were at like ISPO in Japan, like the ski show.
Yeah.
And he just came up to me and he said, "Okay, we want to name the ski something to do with identity, and we want it to be like one word." And so he just started throwing out all these ideas, and so I gave him like 3 names, and he sat down and he just started doing Google searches to make sure everything was, like he could trademark the name, and he just came back with ID1 was one of the names I put forward. So we started with the name, and then from there, it was actually Yanni Latala and myself. We had a lot of influence in that, and Yanni was actually finishing his contract with Salomon, so it was him and I, and then Aiko. Kind of, it was pretty much a safe comparison to the Salomon Mogul 1080, as far as the general shape, but we did change some of it. And I think I've been to both factories, Salomon and ID1, in Japan, and they're just different are just completely different on how skis are made. Like you go in the Salomon factory and it's like just robotic, and it's just like, skis are just pumped out like, 100 every, minute. So you just have and then you go to, ID1 and just see the work. But the wood, the Japanese wood, and maybe we don't have to go into kind of it's on the ID1 webpage, but the wood that of Japan is very unique because it's light, but because of the typhoons season and everything and the high winds that they have, the trees, the DNA of the tree has a lot of bending factors that are quite good. So the lightness and the bending factors of the wood and the consistency, and so I think that's the biggest point, is not only the shaping of the ski, but the construction of the ski and the rebound effect. It's really particular to this kind of wood. So that was my sales point.
Well, they keep selling them. I mean, they're by far the best ski out there, and the market seems to be good. And they're everybody, I would say, it's got a pretty good share of the market, at least in freestyle. That's for sure. It's definitely got a good share. Well, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time here. This has been a lot of fun to catch up and shoot the breeze a little bit. And I got a good amount of notes here, so I'm going to go back and I'll get to listen to this again and kind of absorb as much as I can. So I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on.
Well, thank you, Bobby, and I wish you guys a really good success in December. I'll most likely see you guys in January, so I'm going to be joining up with you guys, and we can sit down and talk again. Or
love
if you have
to.
any questions,
Absolutely.
Pop me a message if you want clarification.
Yeah. So. Absolutely. All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
And say hi to the family.
Yeah. All right. Bye.